The first time anyone noticed something was off was during a normal Friday afternoon, the kind where nothing exciting is supposed to happen. The school parking lot buzzed with the usual chaos of honking cars, parents scrolling on their phones, and kids rushing out with backpacks half open and papers flying everywhere. Among the crowd stood Alina, nervously tapping her fingers against her notebook, pretending to check her messages while secretly waiting. She told herself she was only staying behind to finish homework, but deep down she knew that wasn't the real reason. Her eyes kept drifting toward the same silver SUV parked near the exit, the one that always arrived 5 minutes earlier than everyone else. Alina wasn't the kind of girl who liked attention. She was quiet, responsible, and usually focused on her studies. Her teachers admired her discipline, her friends trusted her advice, and her family believed she had her life completely under control. But feelings don't always follow rules, and sometimes they show up in places where they don't belong. For weeks, she had tried to ignore the strange excitement she felt whenever she saw Daniel step out of that SUV. He wasn't a teacher, and he wasn't someone she was supposed to notice. He was simply the father of her best friend, Maya. Daniel was known around school events as the calm, supportive parent who never missed a meeting or performance. He had this easy smile that made conversations feel comfortable, and he listened more than he spoke. To most people, he was just another hard-working single father doing his best to raise his daughter. But to Alina, he slowly became someone she found herself thinking about at random times, during class lectures, while studying late at night, even while hanging out with Maya. At first, she convinced herself it was admiration. She respected how he cared for Maya, how patient he seemed, and how he always treated people kindly. It felt harmless, almost innocent. The problem started when admiration quietly turned into something she couldn't explain or control. It wasn't sudden. It crept in slowly, like a thought you try to push away but keeps returning stronger each time. She began volunteering to stay at Maya's house longer after group study sessions. She found excuses to help Maya with projects that required parent supervision. She laughed a little louder at Daniel's jokes and noticed small details about him that no one else seemed to see: the tired look behind his smile, the way he checked his phone less when he was spending time with Maya, and the quiet way he thanked Alina for helping out. Daniel, on the other hand, never showed any signs that he noticed Alina differently. He treated her the same way he treated all of Maya's friends, polite, respectful, and distant in a responsible adult kind of way. But sometimes, even normal kindness can be misunderstood, especially when emotions start blurring boundaries. Alina began creating stories in her head, replaying simple conversations and convincing herself they meant more than they actually did. Every casual compliment felt special. Every moment of eye contact felt like a hidden message. She knew it sounded ridiculous, and part of her felt guilty for even thinking this way about her best friend's parent. Still, she couldn't stop. Things took a complicated turn the night Maya invited her to stay over for a small birthday celebration. It was supposed to be simple, just movies, snacks, and late-night gossip. The house felt warm and relaxed, filled with laughter and music playing softly in the background. Daniel spent most of the evening setting up decorations and making sure everything was perfect for Maya. At one point, Maya stepped out to take a phone call from another friend, leaving Alina alone in the kitchen while Daniel washed dishes. The silence felt heavier than usual. Alina tried to focus on slicing cake, but her hands trembled slightly. Daniel noticed and asked if she was okay, his tone casual and friendly. That simple question caught her off guard. She nodded quickly, but instead of leaving the kitchen, she stayed. They started talking, first about school, then about Maya, then about life plans and future dreams. It was the longest conversation they had ever shared, and for Alina, it felt dangerously meaningful. She felt seen, understood, and comfortable in a way she hadn't expected. When Daniel laughed at something she said, her heart raced so loudly she was sure he could hear it. That night, lying on Maya's bedroom floor while scrolling through her phone, Alina realized something she had been trying to deny for weeks. She wasn't just admiring Daniel. She had fallen in love with him, or at least what she believed love felt like. The realization terrified her. She knew how wrong and complicated it was. She knew it could destroy her friendship with Maya, damage Daniel's reputation, and create chaos in all their lives. She promised herself it was just a phase, something that would disappear if she ignored it long enough. But emotions don't disappear just because we tell them to. Over the next few days, Alina started making choices she normally wouldn't. She began texting Maya more frequently, not because she wanted to talk to her friend, but because she hoped Daniel might appear in the background during video calls. She offered to help Maya with errands that involved visiting her house. Each decision felt small and harmless on its own, Yet together they slowly pulled her deeper into a situation she didn't fully understand. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Maya had to leave early for a group project meeting and asked Alina to stop by her house later to pick up a notebook she had forgotten to return. Alina hesitated at first, but curiosity and emotion quickly overpowered her hesitation. When she arrived, she realized Maya wasn't home yet. Daniel opened the door, surprised but welcoming, assuming she had come to wait inside. The house was unusually quiet, sunlight pouring through the living room windows, creating a calm and almost surreal atmosphere. They sat down, talking casually at first. Minutes passed, and the conversation drifted into deeper territory again. Regrets, life challenges, and the struggles of balancing responsibilities. Alina felt that same emotional connection building, stronger than before. Her thoughts raced, battling between logic and emotion. She knew she should leave. She knew staying longer could lead to something she might regret forever. But instead of standing up and walking out, she made a decision in that moment that she believed would finally reveal the truth about her feelings. She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and said something she had rehearsed in her mind 100 times but never planned to actually say out loud. The words left her mouth before she could stop herself. The room fell silent almost instantly. Daniel's expression changed in a way she had never seen before, not angry, not shocked, but deeply concerned. The air felt heavy, and the realization of what she had just done hit her all at once. At that exact moment, the front door handle began to turn. And Alina froze, knowing that whatever happened next could change every relationship in her life forever. Alina's breath caught in her throat as the sound of the door opening echoed through the hallway. Her fingers tightened around her phone, and for a split second she considered pretending nothing had happened. Daniel had not responded yet. He was still standing near the kitchen counter, his face tense, his eyes filled with a mix of worry and disbelief. The silence between them felt fragile, like one wrong move could shatter everything. Footsteps grew louder, steady and familiar, and Alina's heart pounded so hard she felt dizzy. "Maya?" Daniel called out, his voice trying to sound normal, but the slight strain was impossible to hide. "Yeah, it's me," Maya replied cheerfully from the entrance. "The meeting got cancelled, so I came back early." "Oh, Alina, you're already here?" Alina forced a smile as Maya walked into the living room, dropping her backpack onto the couch. Maya looked completely relaxed, completely unaware of the emotional storm that had just taken place minutes earlier. Alina quickly slipped her phone back into her bag, her hands slightly shaking. Daniel stepped away from the counter, creating distance, but the tension lingered in the room like invisible smoke. "I was just about to grab your notebook," Alina said, trying to keep her voice steady. She stood up too quickly, nearly knocking over the chair behind her. Maya laughed softly, teasing her for always being in a rush, and pointed toward her bedroom. The moment felt painfully normal, and that made it worse. Alina walked down the hallway, every step feeling heavier than the last, replaying her words from moments ago in her mind. She could still see Daniel's reaction, still feel the weight of what she had confessed. Inside Maya's room, Alina closed the door and leaned against it, trying to slow her breathing. The colorful posters, scattered textbooks, and familiar smell of vanilla candles should have made her feel safe, but instead she felt trapped inside her own thoughts. She grabbed the notebook from Maya's desk, but her hands lingered on it as guilt started creeping in. Maya had trusted her with everything: secrets, fears, dreams about college, and plans for the future. And now Alina was hiding something that could destroy that trust in seconds. From the hallway, she could hear Maya chatting with Daniel, laughing about how her meeting had been cancelled because the group couldn't agree on anything. Their conversation sounded light and comfortable, the kind of everyday interaction that families share without thinking twice. Alina swallowed hard, realizing how close she was to breaking something she could never fix. When she stepped back into the living room, Daniel avoided direct eye contact. It wasn't obvious enough for Maya to notice, but Alina saw it immediately. He busied himself by picking up a stack of mail from the table, pretending to read through it. Maya flopped onto the couch, scrolling through her phone, occasionally showing Alina funny videos. Alina nodded and laughed at the right moments, but her mind was somewhere else, tangled in fear and regret. After a few minutes, Alina said she needed to leave because she had assignments to finish. Maya insisted she stay for dinner, but Alina refused politely, making excuses about deadlines and early classes. As she walked toward the door, Daniel finally looked at her, his expression serious but calm. It was the kind of look that carried unspoken words, and it made her chest tighten. She quickly looked away, said goodbye, and stepped outside into the cool evening air. The walk home felt longer than usual. Every passing car, every distant voice, and every flickering streetlight seemed to match the chaos inside her head. She kept wondering what Daniel was thinking now. Would he tell Maya? Would he talk to her parents? Would he pretend it never happened? The uncertainty terrified her more than any possible outcome. She reached home and locked herself in her room, staring at her phone, half expecting a message from Daniel, half praying there wouldn't be one. Hours passed with nothing. No calls, no texts, no signs that the moment had even existed. That silence, instead of comforting her, made her anxiety grow stronger. She started questioning herself. Had she imagined the emotional connection between them? Had she misunderstood simple kindness for something deeper? The more she thought about it, the more embarrassed she felt. Yet, deep down, a small part of her still hoped that Daniel might respond, might explain something, might give her closure. Over the next few days, Alina avoided Maya as much as possible. She skipped their usual lunch table, claiming she needed extra help from teachers. She replied to Maya's messages with short, delayed answers. Maya noticed the change almost immediately. She sent voice notes asking if something was wrong, joking that Alina was acting like she had joined a secret mission. Alina laughed it off through texts, blaming stress and exams, but the distance between them quietly grew. Meanwhile, Daniel remained completely silent. He didn't contact Alina, and from what she could tell through Maya's casual stories, he was acting normal at home too. That confused her even more. She expected anger, disappointment, or at least some kind of confrontation. Instead, his silence felt heavy, like he was carefully deciding what to do next. One afternoon, during a group presentation at school, Alina caught Maya staring at her with a confused expression. After class, Maya pulled her aside, her tone softer than usual. She asked if Alina was upset about something, if she had done anything wrong, or if there was something she needed to talk about. Alina felt her throat tighten again. She wanted to tell the truth, wanted to release the pressure building inside her, but fear stopped her. She reassured Maya that everything was fine, forcing another smile that didn't reach her eyes. That evening, Alina received a message that made her stomach drop. It was from Daniel. The text was short and simple, asking if they could talk privately. No anger, no explanation, just a request. Her hands trembled as she read it again and again. She knew this conversation could decide everything: her friendship with Maya, her reputation, and the emotional mess she had created for herself. She spent nearly an hour staring at the message before replying with a hesitant yes. Daniel suggested meeting at a quiet public cafe near the school the next day after classes. The location felt deliberate, safe, and controlled. Alina couldn't tell if that made her feel relieved or more nervous. The next day she struggled to focus on anything. Every class felt longer, every ticking second louder. She barely heard her teachers or classmates. Maya sat next to her during one lecture, whispering jokes and complaining about homework, completely unaware of the meeting planned for later. Alina felt a sharp wave of guilt, wondering how long she could keep this secret hidden. When the final school bell rang, her chest tightened again. She watched students rush out of classrooms, laughing and talking about weekend plans, while she slowly packed her bag. Maya asked if she wanted to hang out after school, but Alina quickly said she had family errands to run. Maya looked disappointed but didn't push further. As Alina walked toward the cafe, her mind flooded with worst-case scenarios. She imagined Daniel telling her to stay away from his family. She imagined him revealing everything to Maya. She imagined losing her best friend forever. Each possibility felt more terrifying than the last. When she reached the cafe, she spotted Daniel sitting at a corner table, his posture calm but serious. A cup of coffee sat untouched in front of him. He looked up as she approached, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of customers chatting and cups clinking around them felt strangely distant. Alina sat down across from him, her heart racing again, waiting for him to say something, anything. Daniel took a slow breath, as if choosing his words carefully. His expression carried concern, responsibility, and something else she couldn't quite understand. He finally leaned forward slightly and began to speak, but before he could finish his first sentence, Alina noticed someone standing near the cafe entrance, scanning the room. And the moment she recognized who it was, her entire world felt like it was about to collapse. Alina's chest tightened as she stared toward the cafe entrance, her fingers curling around the edge of the table. Maya stood near the door, looking around as if searching for someone. She was still in her school uniform, her backpack hanging loosely from one shoulder, her expression casual but curious. For a brief second, Alina wondered if she was imagining things, but then Maya stepped further inside, scanning the tables more carefully. The noise of the cafe faded into a dull blur as panic rushed through Alina's body. Daniel noticed the sudden change in her expression and turned slightly to follow her gaze. The moment he saw Maya, his shoulders stiffened almost instantly. He leaned back in his chair, his calm composure slipping just enough to reveal his concern. Alina's mind raced, trying to understand why Maya was there. She hadn't mentioned coming to the cafe. Had she followed Alina? Had she seen the message? The questions stacked on top of each other, making it harder for her to breathe. Maya's eyes finally landed on them. At first she looked confused, her eyebrows pulling together slightly. Then she started walking toward their table, her steps slow but steady. Alina felt her pulse pounding in her ears. Daniel straightened his posture, forcing a neutral expression, but the tension around his jaw was impossible to hide. "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" Maya asked as she reached the table. Her voice wasn't angry, but it carried a hint of surprise that made Alina's stomach twist. She glanced between them, trying to read the situation. "I didn't know you two were meeting." Alina opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her thoughts were tangled, her heart hammering too loudly for her to think clearly. Daniel spoke instead, his tone calm but measured. He said they had run into each other and decided to talk about school-related matters and upcoming events. The explanation sounded reasonable on the surface, but the slight pause before he spoke made Alina nervous that Maya might notice. Maya slid into the empty chair beside Alina, setting her backpack down with a soft thud. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes completely. She mentioned that she had come to the cafe to meet a classmate for a project discussion, but her classmate had cancelled last minute. The coincidence felt too heavy, too perfectly timed, and Alina wondered if Maya truly believed her own explanation or if she was quietly trying to figure out what was really happening. The conversation turned awkwardly casual. Maya started talking about her project and complaining about how stressful group assignments had become. Daniel nodded and responded normally, asking questions and offering suggestions. Alina sat silently for most of it, forcing herself to react at the right moments. The air between them felt fragile, as if one wrong sentence could expose everything. After a few minutes, Maya checked her phone and stood up, saying she needed to head home to finish some work. Before leaving, she looked at both of them again, her expression thoughtful, almost suspicious, though she quickly covered it with a friendly smile. She told Alina she would text her later and told Daniel she would see him at home. As she walked out of the cafe, Alina felt her body slowly relax, but the tension didn't disappear. If anything, it became heavier. Daniel watched Maya leave before turning back toward Alina. His voice dropped slightly, becoming more serious. He said the situation had gone too far and needed to be handled carefully. He explained that he was worried about how this could affect everyone involved, especially Maya. His words were calm and responsible, but they carried weight. Alina felt tears sting her eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. She admitted she never meant to create problems. She tried to explain how confused she had been, how emotions had slowly built up without her understanding why. Daniel listened quietly, his expression firm but not unkind. He told her that feelings can sometimes be complicated, especially during stressful periods in life, but actions have consequences that can hurt people unintentionally. He said they needed to create distance and focus on protecting Maya's trust and emotional well-being. The conversation felt heavy, filled with careful words and uncomfortable honesty. Alina nodded, agreeing with everything he said even though it made her chest ache. While they talked, neither of them noticed that someone had paused outside the cafe window. Maya had returned, her phone in her hand as she searched through messages, but her eyes drifted toward the window by accident. She froze when she saw Alina and Daniel still talking, leaning slightly forward, their expressions serious and emotional. From her angle, she couldn't hear anything, but the body language felt strange. She stood there for a few seconds, her thoughts spinning, before quickly stepping away and walking down the street, her heart beating faster than she expected. Back inside the cafe, Daniel finished speaking and suggested that it might be best if Alina focused on her studies and friendships without visiting their house as often. He reassured her that he wouldn't mention the confession to Maya unless it became necessary, but he strongly believed honesty might eventually be the only way to fix things. His words, though gentle, felt like a final boundary. Alina agreed again, feeling a mixture of relief and heartbreak at the same time. When the conversation ended, they left the cafe separately to avoid attention. Alina walked slowly toward the bus stop, replaying every word in her mind. She wondered if she had just lost something she never truly had, or if she had saved herself from creating a bigger disaster. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, making her flinch slightly. It was a message from Maya asking if she was free to talk later that night. The simple text felt heavier than any long conversation. Meanwhile, Maya walked home faster than usual, her mind racing with questions she didn't know how to ask. She tried convincing herself that she was overthinking, that her father and her best friend had every right to talk about normal things. But a strange feeling lingered in her chest, one she couldn't explain. She remembered how distant Alina had been lately, how nervous she looked earlier, and how Daniel had seemed slightly uncomfortable at the cafe. The puzzle pieces didn't form a clear picture yet, but they created enough doubt to make her uneasy. Later that evening, the atmosphere inside Maya's house felt different, though nothing obvious had changed. Daniel prepared dinner like usual, asking about her day, listening to her talk about school and friends. Maya watched him carefully, noticing small details she had never paid attention to before, the way he paused before answering certain questions, the way he checked his phone more often than usual. She wondered if she was imagining things or if something was truly shifting between the people she trusted the most. Across town, Alina sat on her bed, staring at her screen, trying to decide how to respond to Maya's message. She typed several replies and deleted them all. Every option felt wrong, incomplete, or dishonest. She realized she was standing in the middle of a fragile emotional conflict that could break her friendship, damage a family, and change how people saw her forever. As night settled in, 3 separate rooms held 3 separate storms of thought, each connected by secrets, confusion, and unspoken fears. None of them knew how close they were to discovering the truth from completely different angles. And as Alina's phone lit up again with another message from Maya, longer this time, more serious in tone, she hesitated before opening it, sensing that whatever Maya had written might push everything closer to a moment none of them were ready to face. Alina stared at Maya's new message for several seconds before finally opening it. The text was longer than usual and the tone felt different, less playful, more direct. Maya wrote that she felt like something had been off between them for days. She mentioned how Alina had been distant, how she avoided hanging out, and how the moment at the cafe felt strange. She didn't accuse her of anything, but she asked a simple question that made Alina's chest tighten. Did I do something wrong, or are you hiding something from me? Alina's fingers hovered over the keyboard as her mind filled with panic. She wanted to be honest, but fear held her back like a heavy weight pressing against her chest. She imagined Maya reading the truth and watching their friendship collapse in seconds. She imagined Maya's face turning from confusion to betrayal. The thought alone made her eyes sting. She typed a reply saying she had just been stressed about school and family expectations. She added a few laughing emojis, trying to make it sound normal, trying to push the conversation away from anything serious. But the moment she hit send, she felt a sharp sense of guilt. Maya responded quickly, saying she understood stress but felt like there was more going on. She suggested they meet the next day after school to talk face to face. The message sounded calm, but something about it felt determined, like Maya had already decided she wasn't going to ignore the tension anymore. Alina stared at the screen, realizing she was running out of ways to avoid the truth. That same night, Daniel sat alone in the living room long after Maya had gone to her room. The television played quietly in the background, but he wasn't watching it. His mind kept replaying the conversation at the cafe, analyzing every word, every expression, and every possible outcome. He knew the situation was fragile. He cared deeply about Maya's trust, and the idea of anything damaging that trust made him uneasy. At the same time, he felt responsible for handling the situation carefully so it wouldn't create emotional harm for Alina either. He kept wondering if silence was protecting everyone or slowly making things worse. Upstairs, Maya lay on her bed staring at the ceiling, her thoughts refusing to settle. She trusted Alina more than anyone. They had shared years of memories, secrets, and dreams about the future. But the distance she had been feeling lately didn't seem imaginary anymore. She remembered the cafe scene again, replaying the way Alina had looked nervous and how Daniel had seemed unusually serious. The memory created a small knot of anxiety in her chest that refused to disappear. She picked up her phone and scrolled through old pictures of her and Alina laughing during school trips and birthday parties. The thought of losing that friendship made her uncomfortable, but the thought of being lied to made her even more uneasy. The next day at school felt heavier for all 3 of them, even though they weren't together most of the time. Alina struggled to focus in class, her notebook filling with half-written sentences and distracted sketches. She kept glancing at the clock, dreading the conversation waiting for her after school. Every laugh from classmates sounded distant, like she was watching her life from behind glass. Maya, on the other hand, tried to act normal, chatting with classmates and participating in lessons, but her eyes kept drifting toward Alina. She noticed how quiet she had become, how she avoided direct eye contact, and how she seemed lost in her own thoughts. The more Maya observed, the stronger her suspicion grew, though she still didn't know what she was suspecting. Daniel spent the day at work, but his concentration slipped repeatedly. He found himself checking his phone more often than usual, wondering if either of them would message him. He knew he had asked Alina to create distance, but he also knew emotional situations rarely stayed controlled. A part of him worried that Maya might already sense something was wrong. When the final bell rang, the hallway filled with noise and movement, but for Alina, everything felt slow and heavy. She packed her bag carefully, delaying the moment she had been dreading all day. Maya approached her desk quietly, her expression calm but serious. She asked if they could walk somewhere private to talk. Alina nodded, unable to form words, and followed her outside toward the empty sports field behind the school. The field was quiet, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the grass. They sat on the bleachers, leaving a small space between them that felt bigger than usual. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, filled only by distant sounds of students leaving campus. Maya finally broke the silence, her voice softer than Alina expected. She said she valued their friendship too much to ignore the changes she had been noticing. She admitted she felt confused and hurt, not knowing what had caused the distance. She asked again if Alina was hiding something important. Alina felt her throat tighten. Her heart pounded so loudly she wondered if Maya could hear it. She tried to speak but hesitated, her mind filled with fear of what would happen next. She looked at Maya, seeing genuine concern and trust in her eyes, and the guilt became almost unbearable. Words started forming in her mind, the truth pushing closer to the surface, but just as she was about to speak, her phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced down and saw Daniel's name appear on the screen. The message was short but urgent, asking if she had already spoken to Maya and telling her they needed to handle the situation carefully. The timing of the message made her stomach drop. Maya noticed her expression change and asked who had texted her. Alina quickly locked her phone, but the hesitation had already raised Maya's suspicion. Maya asked again, this time more directly, if her father was involved in whatever was going on. The question hit Alina like a shockwave. She froze, her mind scrambling for an answer that wouldn't destroy everything. Maya's expression shifted slightly, her patience beginning to crack as she watched Alina struggle to respond. At the same time across town, Daniel realized he might have made a mistake by sending that message. He imagined the possibility of Maya seeing it or sensing something from Alina's reaction. He grabbed his keys, his mind filled with concern, and decided he needed to get home as quickly as possible. Back at the sports field, the tension between the two girls grew thicker with every passing second. Maya stood up from the bleachers, pacing slowly, her frustration and worry blending together. She said she didn't want to jump to conclusions, but she needed honesty. She told Alina that whatever the truth was, hearing it from her would hurt less than finding out another way. Alina felt tears gathering in her eyes as she stood up too, her hands trembling slightly. She realized she had reached a moment where silence might cause more damage than the truth. She opened her mouth, ready to finally speak, ready to admit everything she had been hiding. Just then, the sound of a car pulling into the school parking lot echoed across the quiet field. Both of them turned instinctively toward the noise. Daniel stepped out of his car, scanning the area, his expression tense as he spotted them near the bleachers. Maya followed Alina's gaze and saw her father standing there, clearly searching for them, clearly worried. Confusion, suspicion, and realization flickered across Maya's face all at once. She slowly turned back toward Alina, her eyes searching for answers she suddenly felt afraid to hear. And as Daniel started walking toward them, faster with each step, the fragile moment between truth and silence felt like it was about to shatter completely. Daniel's footsteps echoed faintly across the empty sports field as he moved closer, his eyes locked on Maya and Alina. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows behind him, making the moment feel heavier, almost unreal. Maya stood frozen, her arms slowly folding across her chest as her mind tried to catch up with what she was seeing. The fact that her father had shown up at school, at the exact moment she was questioning Alina, didn't feel like a coincidence anymore. Alina felt her pulse hammering in her ears. She hadn't expected Daniel to come here. She hadn't expected everything to collide like this. The fragile space she had been balancing between truth and silence suddenly felt like it was collapsing beneath her feet. She could feel Maya's eyes on her, searching, demanding answers without saying another word. Daniel finally reached them, slightly out of breath but trying to stay composed. He looked at Maya first, offering a gentle, concerned expression, then briefly at Alina, his gaze filled with a quiet warning. He asked if everything was okay, his voice calm but tight around the edges. Maya let out a small, disbelieving laugh, the kind that slips out when emotions get too confusing to control. That's what I was about to figure out, Maya said, her tone sharper than usual. She looked directly at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. Why are you here, Dad? Daniel hesitated for a second, which was all it took for Maya to notice. He explained that he had come to pick her up early because he thought she might want a ride home. The explanation sounded reasonable, but Maya's expression didn't soften. She glanced back at Alina, then at Daniel again, the tension between the three of them thick enough to feel. Alina swallowed hard, feeling trapped between them. She knew she couldn't stay silent much longer. Every second that passed made the situation worse. She opened her mouth to speak, her voice trembling as she tried to gather courage. But before she could form a full sentence, Maya's phone buzzed loudly in her hand. The sudden sound made all three of them flinch slightly. Maya glanced down at her screen, expecting a normal notification, but her face slowly changed as she read the message. Her eyebrows pulled together, confusion spreading across her expression. She looked up, her gaze shifting between Alina and Daniel again, but this time there was something else in her eyes, shock. Why would someone send me this? Maya asked quietly, holding her phone tighter. Alina's stomach dropped instantly. Daniel's posture stiffened, his concern deepening. Maya hesitated before turning her screen toward them. The message had come from an unknown number. Attached to it was a blurry photo taken through the cafe window from the previous day. The image showed Alina and Daniel sitting across from each other, leaning forward mid-conversation, their expressions serious and emotional. For a moment no one spoke. Alina felt the world around her tilt. Her mind raced, trying to figure out who could have taken that picture. The angle made it clear it had been captured secretly from outside without them noticing. Maya's hand trembled slightly as she lowered the phone, her breathing becoming uneven. Did either of you know about this? Maya asked, her voice barely steady. Daniel quickly shook his head, his expression filled with genuine shock. Alina couldn't even speak. Her silence, though unintentional, felt louder than any denial she could have made. Maya's eyes filled with hurt as she stared at her best friend, trying to understand what she was looking at. Why would someone send me a picture of you two meeting in secret? Maya asked, her voice cracking slightly despite her effort to stay calm. And why does it feel like I'm the only one who didn't know about it? Alina felt tears blur her vision, but she forced herself to stay standing. She wanted to explain, to say that nothing inappropriate had happened, that everything was complicated but not what it looked like. Yet the weight of her confession from days earlier pressed against her chest, making it harder to speak honestly without revealing everything. Daniel stepped forward slightly, his tone calm but urgent as he said that the picture didn't show the full situation and that assumptions could lead to misunderstandings. Maya turned toward him slowly, her expression filled with disbelief. Then explain it, she said quietly. The three words hung in the air like a challenge no one was ready to accept. Daniel hesitated again, clearly choosing his words carefully. Alina noticed how careful he was being, how determined he looked to protect Maya from emotional harm. But Maya seemed to notice that hesitation too, and it only made her anxiety grow stronger. Before Daniel could respond, Maya's phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number appeared. This time it wasn't a photo. It was a short text that made Maya's face lose color almost instantly. Ask them what they were really talking about, the message read. You deserve the truth. Maya's breathing became heavier as she stared at the screen. She slowly looked up at Alina, her eyes now filled with pain and confusion that cut deeper than anger. The silence that followed felt unbearable. The wind moved lightly across the empty field, carrying distant sounds of traffic, but in that moment, it felt like the entire world had gone still. Alina's heart pounded violently as she realized someone else knew about the cafe meeting. Someone had been watching. Someone was deliberately pushing Maya toward discovering the truth. The thought sent a wave of fear through her body. She glanced at Daniel, noticing that he had reached the same realization. Maya stepped back slightly, creating physical distance between herself and both of them. She shook her head slowly as if trying to clear her thoughts. She said she didn't understand why strangers were sending her messages about people she trusted the most. Her voice trembled as she admitted she was starting to feel like everyone knew something except her. Daniel tried to reassure her, stepping closer, but Maya raised her hand, stopping him from coming any further. The gesture alone felt like a crack forming in their usually strong father-daughter bond. Alina felt guilt crash over her again, stronger than before. Maya looked back at Alina, her expression desperate now, almost pleading. She asked one final time if there was something important she needed to know. The question carried years of friendship, trust, and shared memories behind it. Alina felt the truth rising to the surface, unstoppable this time. Her lips parted as she prepared to finally confess everything she had been hiding. Her hands trembled, her voice catching in her throat as the first word began to form. But just as she was about to speak, Maya's phone rang, the caller ID still showing the same unknown number. The sharp sound sliced through the silence, making all three of them freeze. Maya stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the answer button, her eyes wide with fear and curiosity. And as the phone continued ringing between them, the feeling grew stronger that whoever was behind those messages wasn't finished yet, and whatever truth they were about to reveal might be far more damaging than anything Alina had planned to confess. The phone kept ringing in Maya's trembling hand, the sound sharp and relentless in the quiet sports field. Her eyes moved between the screen, Alina, and Daniel, as if hoping one of them would stop her from answering. Neither of them spoke. The air felt tight, heavy with everything that had been hidden and everything that was about to be exposed. With a shaky breath, Maya finally pressed the answer button and slowly lifted the phone to her ear. "Hello," she said, her voice barely steady. For a moment, there was only silence on the other end. Then a voice spoke, slightly distorted but clear enough to understand. The caller said they were someone who believed Maya deserved honesty. They mentioned the cafe meeting again and hinted that the truth wasn't what Maya thought. Maya's grip on the phone tightened as she demanded to know who was speaking and why they were interfering in her personal life. The caller ignored the question and instead said something that made Maya freeze. They said, "Ask Alina why she confessed her feelings and why your father refused her." The words hit the air like a sudden storm. Maya's eyes widened as she slowly turned toward Alina, her expression filled with disbelief and pain. The phone slipped slightly in her hand, but she kept it pressed to her ear, as if she needed confirmation that she hadn't misheard. Daniel stepped forward instantly, his voice firm as he told Maya to hang up because whoever was calling was crossing serious boundaries. But Maya shook her head slowly, her gaze locked on Alina. "Is that true?" Maya asked, her voice fragile and breaking. Alina felt her entire body go numb. The truth she had been trying to protect everyone from had just been thrown into the open by a stranger. Tears blurred her vision as she struggled to breathe. She looked at Maya, seeing years of friendship hanging by a thread, and realized she couldn't lie anymore. "Yes," Alina whispered, her voice shaking. "I told him how I felt, but he didn't accept it. He made it clear that it was wrong and that it couldn't happen." The silence that followed felt endless. Maya lowered the phone slowly, her hand dropping to her side as the caller disconnected. Her face showed a mix of shock, heartbreak, and confusion. She took a few steps back, trying to process what she had just heard. Daniel spoke carefully, explaining that Alina's feelings had surprised him and that he had immediately set clear boundaries. He said he had only been trying to handle the situation responsibly and protect everyone, especially Maya. His voice was steady, but the worry in his eyes was impossible to hide. Maya looked at him, her expression searching for any sign of dishonesty. She asked if anything inappropriate had ever happened between them. Daniel answered firmly that it hadn't and never would. He said his only focus had always been his role as a parent and protecting his daughter's trust. Maya turned back toward Alina, tears forming in her eyes now. She asked why Alina hadn't told her the truth earlier. The question carried deep hurt, not anger, and it made Alina's chest ache even more. Alina admitted she had been scared of losing her best friend. She explained how the feelings had confused her, how she never intended to hurt anyone, and how she had already agreed to stay away to fix her mistake. Her voice cracked as she apologized, the weight of guilt and regret pouring into every word. Maya listened silently, tears sliding down her cheeks. The tension between them felt unbearable as years of trust and shared memories stood fragile against this painful truth. Finally, Maya spoke, saying she felt hurt that Alina hadn't trusted her enough to be honest. But she also admitted she could see that Alina was struggling with emotions she didn't fully understand. The moment felt like everything could either shatter or slowly heal. Daniel stepped back slightly, giving them space, his expression filled with concern but also relief that the truth was finally out. He said that sometimes people make emotional mistakes, but what matters is how they take responsibility afterward. His words were calm, meant to steady the situation rather than control it. Maya wiped her tears and looked at both of them again. She said she needed time to process everything, but she appreciated that the truth had finally come out directly instead of through secrets or rumors. She admitted she was hurt, but she didn't want to lose two important people in her life because of confusion and silence. For a moment, it felt like the storm had begun to settle. Alina nodded, accepting whatever distance Maya needed, feeling both relieved and heartbroken at the same time. Daniel placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder, reassuring her that they would face everything together as a family. But just as the tension began to soften, Maya's phone buzzed again. All three of them froze instantly. Maya hesitated before looking at the screen. Another message from the same unknown number appeared, but this time it included a video file. Her heart pounded as she slowly opened it. The video showed footage from inside the school hallway taken days earlier. It showed Alina walking alone, visibly upset, talking on her phone. The audio was faint but clear enough to hear fragments of her voice saying she didn't know how to stop her feelings and that she was afraid everything would fall apart. Maya's hands trembled as she watched it. Daniel's expression turned serious again as he realized someone had been secretly recording and following Alina. The situation suddenly felt bigger than emotional conflict. It felt invasive, disturbing, and dangerous. Who would even have this? Maya whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Alina stared at the screen, her face losing color. She remembered that phone call. She had been alone. Or at least she thought she was. The realization that someone had been watching her private moments made her feel exposed and terrified. Another message arrived immediately after the video. This isn't the whole story, it read. There's more you should know. The three of them stood frozen again, the fragile resolution between them suddenly overshadowed by a new, darker mystery. The emotional conflict they had just faced now felt connected to something deeper, something none of them understood yet. Daniel stepped closer to both girls, his protective instincts rising. He said they needed to figure out who was behind the messages and why someone was targeting them. Maya nodded slowly, still shaken but now focused on a new fear growing inside her. Alina hugged herself tightly, her mind racing with possibilities she didn't want to imagine. As the sun dipped lower behind the school buildings, casting long shadows across the empty field, the three of them stood closer than before, united by truth but surrounded by a threat none of them had expected. And as Maya's phone buzzed one more time in her trembling hand, displaying another unknown notification waiting to be opened, they all realized that revealing the truth had only uncovered a far more unsettling secret that was just beginning to unfold. The notification glowed on Maya's phone screen, the three of them staring at it as if opening it might change everything again. Maya took a slow breath, her fingers still shaking, and tapped the message. This time, instead of another photo or video, there was a simple text followed by a name. The message read, "You deserve to know the truth. Talk to Ria." Alina's eyebrows pulled together in confusion. Maya frowned, reading the name again as if trying to place it. Daniel looked between them, clearly trying to understand who this person was and why they were involved. Maya's expression slowly shifted from confusion to realization. "Ria, she's in our class," Maya said quietly. "She's in the media club. She handles video editing and filming for school events." Alina felt her stomach twist. She barely interacted with Ria, but she remembered seeing her often with a camera during school programs and competitions. Daniel suggested they shouldn't jump to conclusions but agreed that the messages felt too specific to be random. Maya stared at the phone again, her voice firm now, saying she was tired of secrets and wanted to end the situation completely. She decided they should talk to Ria directly the next day at school. That night felt long for all three of them. The emotional truth had already shaken their relationships, but the idea that someone had been secretly watching and recording moments from their lives created a different kind of fear. Alina barely slept, replaying every moment she might have been filmed without knowing. Maya lay awake thinking about trust, betrayal, and how quickly things could spiral when people stopped communicating honestly. Daniel spent most of the night considering how to protect both girls from emotional and personal harm, knowing this situation had crossed into something serious. The next morning, school felt unusually tense. The normal chatter in the hallways and laughter from classrooms felt distant as Maya and Alina walked side by side, not as close as before but not separated either. Their silence carried a fragile understanding. Daniel had encouraged them to handle the situation calmly and responsibly, and both of them agreed that confronting Ria together was the best way to uncover the truth. They found Ria in the media room during lunch break, organizing camera equipment. She looked surprised to see both of them standing in the doorway, especially with the serious expressions on their faces. Maya stepped forward first, her voice steady but direct, asking if Ria had been sending anonymous messages and recording private moments. Ria froze for a few seconds. Her grip tightened around the camera lens she was holding. The silence stretched long enough to confirm what words hadn't yet admitted. Finally, she sighed and placed the equipment down, her shoulders dropping slightly. She admitted she had sent the messages and taken the photos and videos. The confession landed heavily in the room. Maya asked why she would do something so invasive and hurtful. Ria hesitated, her eyes flickering toward Alina before looking down. She explained that she had noticed Alina spending time at Maya's house frequently. At first, she said she didn't think much of it, but over time she misunderstood what she saw and began assuming there was a secret relationship developing. She claimed she believed she was exposing something wrong before it could become worse. Her voice carried a mix of guilt and defensiveness as she spoke. Alina felt anger rise inside her, mixed with disbelief. She explained that Ria's actions had caused emotional damage and spread fear instead of helping anyone. Maya added that even if Ria believed something was wrong, secretly recording people and sending anonymous threats wasn't the right way to handle it. Ria's expression softened as she realized the impact of what she had done. She admitted she let curiosity and assumptions guide her actions instead of understanding the full situation. She apologized, her voice quieter now, explaining that she never intended to cause this level of emotional conflict or break friendships. Maya looked at Alina, then back at Ria, her voice calm but firm as she said trust is fragile and hard to rebuild once broken. She explained that what Ria did affected more than just rumors or drama, it invaded privacy and created unnecessary fear. Ria nodded, acknowledging that she had crossed boundaries and promised to delete everything she had recorded. Later that afternoon, Maya and Alina sat together on the same bleachers where everything had almost fallen apart. The air felt calmer, the tension replaced with quiet reflection. For the first time in days, they spoke without fear interrupting every sentence. Maya admitted that hearing the truth had hurt, but she appreciated that Alina had eventually been honest. She said friendships aren't perfect and sometimes people make emotional mistakes, especially when feelings become confusing. Alina apologized again, promising she would never let silence or fear create distance between them again. The conversation didn't magically erase the pain, but it created space for healing. Maya smiled faintly, saying rebuilding trust takes time but was possible if they both stayed honest. Alina nodded, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude that she hadn't lost her best friend completely. When Daniel picked Maya up later that day, the atmosphere in the car felt lighter than it had in weeks. Maya explained what had happened with Ria and how the situation was finally resolved. Daniel listened carefully, proud of how she handled it. He reminded her that misunderstandings and emotional mistakes happen, but honesty and communication are what protect relationships from permanent damage. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to normal. Alina focused more on her studies and personal growth, learning to understand her emotions in a healthier way. She maintained respectful distance from Daniel, and their interactions returned to simple, appropriate conversations during group settings. Maya and Alina rebuilt their friendship step by step, laughing again, studying together and supporting each other through school challenges. Ria kept her promise, deleting the recordings and apologizing privately to both of them again. The situation became a quiet lesson throughout their school about privacy, assumptions, and how quickly rumors and secrets can hurt real people. As the school year moved forward, the entire experience left a lasting impact on all of them. Alina learned that emotions, especially unexpected ones, need honesty and boundaries to avoid turning into mistakes. Maya learned that trust sometimes gets tested but can grow stronger when people face truth together. Daniel learned how important it is to guide emotional situations carefully, especially when young people are still learning how to understand their feelings. One afternoon, as Maya and Alina walked out of school together, laughing about an upcoming exam and making plans for the weekend, the memory of everything they went through felt distant but meaningful. Their friendship felt different now, more mature, more honest, and more understanding. Honesty and respect will always be stronger than secrets and fear. Alina glanced at Maya and smiled, realizing that love, friendship, trust, and emotional conflict can sometimes collide in unexpected ways. But she also understood that mistakes don't define a person forever, the way they take responsibility and grow from them does. As they disappeared into the busy parking lot filled with students and parents, life moved forward naturally, leaving behind a story filled with emotional lessons, unexpected twists, and a reminder that